Hello, everyone. Mike's MMA Picks here. Shining a spotlight today on a featherweight matchup between Ho Choi and Kyle Nelson. This is a matchup that was originally supposed to take place in Korea. Now the bout has ventured back to Las Vegas, UFC Vegas 68, where the bouts will take place late in the evening and early in the morning on Sunday to appease the Asian crowd. And we have Korean Superboy, who is now 31 years of age, taking on Kyle Nelson. Kyle Nelson, 13-5 overall record. Both of these fighters, identical ages, very close as far as height goes. Now, Kyle Nelson, we've seen he's had a difficult cut down to 145 pounds in the past. Both of these fighters, very similar reach, and you have Ho Choi coming in as a minus 182 betting favorite currently. Taking on Nelson, who's coming in as the plus 160 underdog. Now, I have laid 2 units on Ho Choi at minus 182. You might ask yourself, why on God's green earth is Mike backing a fighter who has not competed or won a fight since 2016? And I'll tell you why. Because Ho Choi is facing one of the worst fighters in the featherweight division in Kyle Nelson. Skill for skill, Ho Choi has Kyle Nelson beat across the board. The chin may be a concern here for Ho Choi, but the precise striking of Ho Choi out of the gate should be a tremendous difference maker. You look at the strikes landed per minute for Ho Choi, 5.32 strikes per minute. Now, granted, these stats are a bit dated. Striking defense is the major concern for Choi here, 6.38 strikes absorbed per minute. And you look at the accuracy for Choi, 51%. Very precise striker, someone who fights out of a camp with Korean Zombie, is skill for skill, a tremendous fighter. The ground game may go to Nelson, but you watch back his fights against Matt Sales and against Jai Herbert, etc. Nelson hasn't shown me much. Ho Choi, it must also be mentioned that going into his fight against Charles Jourdain, he revealed in an interview that he had suffered a torn ACL prior to that fight, and due to the mandatory military service, with an interview with John Coe, said that he had to take the fight in Korea. He could not leave the country for a number of years to compete elsewhere, and also suffered a broken forearm in that fight that subsequently needed surgery. Looked great early against Charles Jourdain. Also looked solid early against Jeremy Stevens. Faltered late, was caught in both of those spots. You look up and down the resume of each fighter. Ho Choi, the much more prolific striker. Kyle Nelson's going to be throwing hooks here. You watch the Billy Q fight against Kyle Nelson. Billy Q was lighting Kyle Nelson up at times. And Billy Q is not a high-level striker when you compare him to other featherweight fighters. Choi, in my eyes, is the rightful favorite here. And you look at recency bias. That's another thing that's in play here. Not many folks might remember Ho Choi. Also, Kyle Nelson's lost 4 out of his last 5 bouts The Diego Ferreira fight was getting mollywopped out there. Polo Reyes knockout. I mean, Ho Choi could have taken out Polo Reyes in a heartbeat. I've been keeping an eye on Choi's YouTube page and Instagram, etc. And Choi looks like he's ready for this fight. I know he had a shoulder injury against, or he was supposed to fade Danny Chavez. That fight didn't come to fruition. But in my eyes, we're getting some significant value here on Ho Choi, who is the much more proficient striker, fights out of a great camp with Korean Zombie. Has now, it's not like he has chosen not to compete. This is a fighter who's stayed active behind the scenes and he is the goods when it comes to actually getting out there and performing. You look at Kyle Nelson's statistics here, landing at a 46% clip, landing only 3.34 strikes per minute. His striking defense is 47%, which is extremely low. So I suspect he's going to be there to be hit early and often. And it would not surprise me to see Ho Choi come out here and finish Kyle Nelson. That's what I'm expecting. And there is a world where Ho Choi hits a wall late in the second round, early in the third round, and gets caught by Kyle Nelson's power punches, because Nelson, that's one thing that he does. I'll give him a couple of things. He's tough, very, very tough. He's one of the most unathletic fighters in the division and in the UFC in general. He can throw extremely hard, but as far as technical proficiency, Ho Choi is the much better fighter. Now, Choi could get clipped, could get taken out of there. Ring rust is real. It's been a number of years since he's competed, 2019 to be exact. Go watch back Charles Jourdain's post-fight interview. He says, or in a recent interview, he came out and said that Ho Choi is one of the hardest hitters that he's ever faced. And I think that Kyle Nelson's going to get taken out of there. I believe that we have some solid line value here at -182 headed into this weekend's fight card. And Ho Choi is going to be the pick here. If this fight gets extended, if Ho Choi does get taken down, yes, I do have some concerns, because Nelson does have what looks like some semblance of a ground game, but he's only landing takedowns at 10%. This is somebody who's had 5 UFC fights under their belt, and he has a lot of difficulty getting the fights to the mat. Watch back the third round against Jai Herbert, the way he tried to land a takedown there, and he was the one who ended up on bottom. Also, watched back his fight against Sales. Not good looks there, trying to get fights to the mat. And Choi is a tactician. One of my favorite fighters on the roster. You don't get to see him compete that often, but I'll be picking him to win here. And depending on where these odds go, I may end up adding a little bit more. So give me Ho Choi, risking 2 units. I want to wish everybody a tremendous Sunday. And we're a week out from the fight. So, of course, there are no certainties in this game. And Choi's going to be the pick, and I expect him to come out here and get the victory. This fight was supposed to take place in Korea. The Choi Cub Swanson fight ended up going into the Hall of Fame, and I believe this is a situation where they're giving Choi, one of the weakest fighters on the entire roster, at 145 pounds. Also, Nelson could land a haymaker here and end Choi's night, but this is a spot where Choi is put in a spot to shine. So have a great rest of your day. Remember, check the third-party tracked record. Up well over 100 units. Did well last year, and 5 consecutive winning years. So I'm going to be putting out a lot of free content this year. And I want to thank everybody for their support. Have a great rest of your day.